اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وقل ربي زدني علما. Alhamdulillah. First of all, welcome, marhaban to everybody. And I also want to thank personally the Science Center from the Baladiya of Kunya, especially Ustad Ali. I don't want to say your last name because I can't pronounce so I don't want to. But Ustad Ali, who was with us last year, and he's become the director here. And so they were kind enough to allow us to use this facility, which is a very high-tech. This was a huge multi-million-dollar center, and it's the Turkish community and the government's commitment to really restoring to our tradition the importance of science. A lot of the extraordinary developments that happened historically in science were from the Muslims. And at a certain point, that aspect of worldly knowledge was abandoned to a large degree. They kept up astronomy till very late, but by and large, you did not see the types of advancements that you had in that early period. And because of that, especially in the military area, the Europeans who benefited greatly from the Muslim knowledge. In fact, I think it's arguable that the hadith about one of the signs of the end of time is antarid al-amatu rabbataha. I mean, my personal interpretation of that, I haven't seen it from a scholar, but my personal interpretation of that is that the Islamic civilization gave birth to the Western civilization, and the Islamic civilization was a amma civilization. It was a civilization of servitude, but it gave birth to a civilization of hegemony, a civilization of rububiyyah that really took it upon itself to conquer nature, and instead of working with nature, to subdue nature. In fact, the metaphor that was used by Francis Bacon, who is really at the root of modern Western civilization. Francis Bacon is probably the single most important person in the change that occurs in Western civilization from a religious society to a secular society. I mean, he really begins that transformation. There are people before him, undeniably, but he's at the root of it when deductive reasoning was supplanted and replaced by inductive reasoning, and the scientific method becomes the only method of knowledge, which is only one aspect of knowledge. And so the Muslims had metaphysics, but they also had physics. And you need both to have a healthy civilization. So it's important. And the nice thing about this country is there is a lot of intellectual activity. And I spent last year, we had an evening one night with several of the Turkish scholars, and I was just really impressed to see them discussing a lot of the ideas in Western philosophy. They were they'd read Heidegger, Habermas. They knew what postmodernism was. They knew what critical theory was. And I haven't seen that in scholars in other parts of the Muslim world. And those are important for scholars to be aware of, because these are the things that people don't realize that philosophy is at the root of what determines the worldview of civilizations. And so to ignore philosophy is really to ignore the worldview that is dominant in your civilization. And we have a hegemonic civilization that is having very, very negative effects on the environment, It's a belligerent civilization. It's a civilization that manufactures massive amounts of weapons and then spreads those weapons all over the world, and then really partakes in conflicts that happen as a result of those weapons. And so the Muslim civilization was traditionally a service-oriented civilization. It was a civilization that every enterprise involved serving the poor, free hospitals. The Muslims started a lot of the things that we take for granted in some of the more enlightened societies. And I'm talking more, not so much enlightened in terms of religious, but just in terms of social services, like the northern European countries, like Norway and Iceland and Denmark. Iceland, I think, is probably one of the most intelligent secular societies out there. And they've done amazing things in their social welfare, prohibiting pornography, not on religious grounds, but simply on the common weal. It wasn't a healthy thing for a society. They're also one of the few societies that is truly middle class. And the Prophet ﷺ, even though he chose poverty over wealth, and he had the choice, he did that as a way of solidarity with poor people, which are the majority of people on the planet. But he preferred middle. He preferred the middle, what we would call the middle class. And I'm not talking about middle class in America, which is an extravagant, wealthy class, but middle class in cultures where people have enough. They have their basic needs are met. That's a middle class, when your basic needs are met. I mean, middle class in the West is actually, would be considered a very wealthy class historically. I mean, the houses that a lot of us live in the West, if you go and visit King Abdulaziz's house the 100 years ago, if you visit his palace in Ta'if, which we did a few years back, it's actually far less impressive than most of the middle-class houses I've been in the United States. And that was a king of the Arabian Peninsula. So people today live like kings of the past. So we're here in Turkey, and this is a really difficult time for Muslims, as all of you are very aware. I don't think anybody here is unaware of a lot of the events that have been happening in the Muslim world. There's an incredible amount of suffering going on right down the road. And there's a helplessness, I think, that we all feel. Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman radiallahu anhu once said that towards the latter days, the Prophet told him that towards the latter days, he said, يُخَيَّرَ الْمَرْءُ بَيْنَ الْعَجْزِ وَالْفُجُورِ, that people would be given a choice of being bad people or being helpless people. And one of the tabi'een said, قَبَّحَ اللَّهُ الْعَجْزِ, may Allah make ugly the helplessness. Because these were Arab people, strong people. And Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman said, قَبَّحَكَ اللَّهُ أَنْتَ, may Allah make you ugly. Al-ajzu khayrun min al-fujur. Helplessness is better than profligacy. So the sunnah of helplessness, and our Prophet was helpless in Mecca. He was helpless at Ta'if. There's a sunnah of being helpless. And part of that sunnah is accepting your state. That is your state. It's helplessness. And it's a hard state to accept. But that is the sunnah of helplessness. It's to accept your state and to call on God and to be content with the qadr. Because there's only two views on this planet. One is that we live in an orderly universe. And this doesn't just mean the heavenly orders or the orders of the seasons. The flowers bloom in an orderly manner. Farmers don't plant in winter. Farmers know when to plant because there's an order. If you plant outside of the season of planting, you're not going to harvest the fruit. They know that. And so the nature of God's world is order. And then there's the people that don't believe that this is a chaotic, disorderly planet with no order in it. The chaos and disorder that you see on the planet only comes from the chaos and disorder that's within us, that when we don't align ourselves with heavenly order. That's all it is. It's a manifestation of our own disorder. And that is because of sinfulness. It's as simple as that. If people align themselves with God, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala harmonizes their conditions. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah doesn't change the conditions of a people. مَا بِقَوْمٍ. He doesn't change the conditions of a people until they change what's in themselves. So this is takween and taklif. Amr takwini and amr taklifi. The conditions are, they're mukawwana, they're outside of the taklif. You can't determine your conditions. You can't determine your conditions. The people in Gaza did not determine their conditions. They were born into those conditions. We didn't determine our conditions. But what we can determine is what's in our nafs. That's where Allah has given us power. We can actually change what's in ourselves. And God says that when you get enough people to do that, He will change your conditions. That's His business. That's not our business. And part of the qalb al-haqa'iq, which is the inversion of realities that happens at the end of time, is that people are preoccupied with things outside of their power and completely unoccupied, completely negligent of things within their power. And so this is a huge problem with the human condition. So the time we're here is a short time. The Quran about ayyam al-ma'dudat, about Ramadan, it says that their ma'dudat is what they call jam'u qillah. You know, ayyam is jam'u qillah, that it's awqat, it's jam'u qillah. It's a plural of paucity. It's a few days. And so we're here for a limited amount of time, and we want to make the best of the time that we can and utilize the time, try not to waste our time. We're inefficient by our nature. And Allah's kataba alayna hada shay. I mean, this is something, even our bodies are working at about a 33, 34% efficiency rate in terms of the usage of our caloric energy. Allah, that's His sunnah in creation. You know, a car has about a 7 to 10% efficiency rate. 90% of the car's energy is dissipated, it's just wasted. So humans are master time wasters. We're master food wasters. If you see the tonnage of food that's wasted on this planet, it's beyond belief. There was a lot of food wasted tonight. We waste food, we waste money, we waste time. But what we should do is make tawbah and get better and better, inshallah, at trying to utilize the time. Because as it's a diminishing commodity, if you want to use an economic metaphor, وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. By time, man is at loss because it's just dissipating. Life is a concatenant of moments. It's just one moment after the other. Allah, they called Allah, the scholastics in medieval Christianity called God the Nunc Stans. And I think they probably got that from Imam al-Jurjani. In the Ta'rifat, he says that God is al-an ad-da'im, the eternal now. God is in the present tense. And we are always in the present tense, but we're obsessed with the past and the future. We're in a state of khawf, about the future, fear. Everybody's in fear and trepidation. What's going to happen next? And then we have grief over the past. This is the human condition. The Prophet ﷺ sought refuge from these states. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-huzni, right? Min al-huzn, min al-hammi, what min al-hammi wal hazan. I seek refuge in you from anxiety about the future and hazan about the past. So he sought refuge in that state, from that state. So we have a short time, try to make the best of the time. People are obviously coming from different places. Some people were already in Turkey, so you have no excuses. But the people that came from other places, it takes a little time to acclimatize. And so utilize the time to get to sleep when you can. And then also, because of the nature of this, it's an intensive, your mind's going to be stimulated, hopefully. And because of that, you're going to be activated. And that will sometimes make it difficult just to relax. So we have Dr. Yang who's coming to get you guys calmed down. He was here last year. People really liked him. My advice to you is he's a real gem. He's comes out of another tradition, and so be aware of that. He's very respectful of Islam, but be aware of that he's from China and he comes out of a different tradition. But he's a martial arts expert, and he's also a Qigong expert. And Qigong are the exercises that are related. Chinese martial artists do Qigong as exercises for Kung Fu and Tai Chi. Kung Fu is the young man's martial art in China, and Tai Chi is the older man's martial art. But the Qigong are the exercises that they do to strengthen their Qi and their Jing, and they're very useful. He's a really good teacher. He knows them really well, and he's living proof of how effective they are for people that were here last year. Indefatigable energy. He really has incredible energies, and he attributes that to being consistent in that practice. So, and then alhamdulillah, all the teachers are here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the believers, أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم, obey Allah and His Messenger, and أولي الأمر منكم, the people put in charge. So obviously, at the macro level, we have to obey all the laws in this country, respect the state that we're in, and I'm sure everyone will do that. But also, we have to respect the people in authority at the rihla, and inshallah, none of them would abuse their power. Like the Sahaba, one of the Sahaba was Amir of a group, and he told them to jump into the fire. And they said, we became Muslim to save ourselves from the fire. So when they got back, they told the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. You don't obey creatures if it means disobeying the Creator. And that's a qaida in our tradition. So you should obey the people. If they ask you not to do something, don't get testy with them. If it seems unreasonable or something like that, maybe go to a superior about it, but don't argue. This isn't a place for argumentation. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, Imam Tirmidhi and others relate, مَا ضَلَّ قَوْمٌ بَعْدَ هُدًى كَانُوا عَلَيْهِ إِلَّا أُوتُوا الْجَدَلِ. People don't go astray after they were given guidance, except that what's replaced, argumentation is the replacement of the guidance. That's a sign that people are astray if they're arguing. And Imam Malik never argued. And if people started arguing in the masjid of the Prophet, he used to get up, shake his rida, his shawl, and say, Antum harb, you're war. And he would just walk away. Our religion is not a religion of argumentation. Ulama, it's makruh for ulama to debate. It was traditionally considered haram for common people to debate about religion. Because you can't, if you don't have knowledge, you shouldn't be discussing fine points of this, that, or the other. So don't argue. You can discuss things. That's important. I was looking at some really intelligent I thought they were from me. I was thinking, oh God. But some really good questions from the Aqidah class. So shows good. So you have a right to ask any question. You have a right to ask any question. Not all answers are satisfying. That's the nature of dunya. There's certain things we just, Allahu wa Rasuluhu a'lam. We don't know why a lot of things happen, but the general principles that we have in our religion give us guidance in any situation. And then the wisdom is determining what's the appropriate guidance for the appropriate situation, which is what our ulama call tahqiq al-manat. And inshallah we'll talk about that. In fact, Imam al-Ghazali actually is the originator of that concept, which is a very important concept in usul al-fiqh. So I wanted to read, and then I'll just end this. The Prophet ﷺ, Abu Huraira mentions, and this is in the book of Al-Fitan by Nu'aym ibn Hamad, that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that, was talking about when the fitan come. And we're living in a time of fitan, and if you don't believe that, I don't know where you are, on the North Pole or something like that. But he said, لا ينجو من شرها إلا من دعا كدعاء الغرق, that no one will be safe from this except those who call the prayer of a drowning man. And that really should be our prayer these days, because the planet is drowning. And if you're not aware of that, again, I don't know where you are. I heard somebody, I was in Istanbul yesterday, and I heard somebody in a table next to me was saying to the other person, oh, it's so amazing, we went out on the Bosphorus and there were all these incredible jellyfish. And that person probably doesn't know, but I actually read a book called Stung, which is about how jellyfish are taking over the ocean. It was one of the most disturbing books I've ever read, written by the leading expert on jellyfish who lives in New Zealand. But he said, لا ينجو من شرها إلا من دعا كدعاء الغرق أسعد أهلها كل تقي خفي إذا ظهر لم يعرف وإن جلس لم يفتقد وأشقى أهلها كل خطيب مسقع أو راكب موضع. He said the happiest people in those days would be pious people who kept their piety to themselves. If they show up somewhere, nobody knows them. If they sit somewhere, nobody's looking for them. And he said, and the worst people are the khatibs, the misqa, khatib misqa, which is a really powerful orator, because this is a time of demagoguery. And so you have orators that rile people up and get them stirred up and get them agitated in an agitated time. And then people traveling to some place. So, and he said that this fitna would be amya mudrima. It would be like a blind, dark fitna. Tamuru mawr al-bahr. It'll be like waves of the ocean. لا يبقى بيت من العرب والعجم إلا ملأته ذلا وخوفا. There's no home of the Arabs or the non-Arabs except they're filled with this dhul and fear. تطيف بالشام وتغشى بالعراق. It'll be in Syria and it'll be in Iraq, covering Iraq. وتخبط بالجزيرة بيدها ورجلها, and it will have its hand and foot on the Arabian Peninsula. تعرك الأمة فيها عرك الأديم. The ummah will be pounded like the leather cloth that's used to grind mill, like the millstone cloth. يشتد فيها البلاء حتى ينكر فيها المعروف. The tribulations will be so great that the ma'ruf won't be known. ويعرف فيها المنكر, and the munkar will be what's known. لا يستطيع أحد أن يقول مه. No one will be able to say stop, stop, silence, silence. ولا لا يرقعونها من ناحية إلا تفتقت من ناحية. Nobody will sew up one part of it except another part will be ripped open. يصبح الرجل فيها مؤمنا ويمسي كافرا. People will go to sleep believers and wake up kafirs. ولا ينجو منها إلا من دعا كدعاء الغرق في البحر. And the only people that will be saved are people that call the call of somebody who's drowning. So, Allahu A'lam if this applies to our time right now, but certainly sounds like it. So we're in a difficult time, and I think a lot of people are almost, I worked in a intensive care unit, and sometimes we had comatose patients there, and it was always very strange when you change their IV lines, or because you'd poke them or draw blood or do all that, and there was nothing, no response. So it's a very strange thing to see somebody really comatose. But the ummah seems to be really comatose. We just get afflicted with so much. And we need to call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We really do. This is a time we should be calling the dua of the gharq, somebody who's drowning. Because that's the dua of the one who Allah will always answer their prayer. Yujib dua al-mutar idha da'a wa yakshif as-su'. Allah will answer the prayer of the desperate, and He will remove their harm. And we should believe that. So, may Allah give you all a blessed time here. I hope you don't see anything that troubles you while you're here. I hope it's beneficial for all of you. And we should, during this time, just remember our brothers and sisters in Gaza, in Palestine, in Syria, in Iraq, Egypt, Libya, Yemen, the Central African Republic, China now, the Uyghurs are having difficulties, Somalia, that's been going on for a long time, even Kenya. I recently met with a lady from Kenya, very, very high-powered Muslim lady. She has a very high position in the government, and she was in the United States visiting, and she came, had dinner with me and my family, and she said that she's from Kenya, from the Muslims of Kenya, and she said that the Muslims were always considered the most trustworthy community in Kenya. She said when she was young, all the Kenyans respected them. They were known to be honest as merchants. She said now they've begun to hate us. And she said it's very strange to see that happening, and it's coming from these really harsh manifestations of people that call themselves Muslims. I don't know where they get that idea, because the Prophet was anything but harsh. لو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك, فبما رحمة من الله لنت لهم. It was a mercy from Allah that you were gentle. He was layyin al-arika. He was He was a gentle human being. And he really did not like violence. He was not a violent person. If you study his life, he was not a violent person. But he was a lion in battle when he was forced to. But he said, لا تتمنوا لقاء العدو in Sahih Bukhari. Don't desire to meet enemies. There's a sickness in that when you want to fight. It's a sickness. It's a sickness of young men in particular. Imr al-Qais in Sahih Bukhari, there's a section about fitna. It's in the Bab al-Fitna in Sahih Bukhari. And it said, the Sahaba said that whenever fitna, إِذَا اشْتَعَلَتِ الْفِتَنِ, whenever fitna arose amongst the Muslims, we used to remember the lines of Imr al-Qais, the Jahili poet. This is in Sahih Bukhari, right? And the lines are about the nature of war. That when war shows up, الحرب أول ما تكون فتية تسعى بزينتها لكل جهول. That when war first shows up, it shows up like a beautiful young girl, seducing every young ignoramus. حتى إذا اشتعلت وشد ضرامها ولت عجوزا غير ذات حليل. Until when the flames erupt and it becomes the harshness of war, she turns out to be an old hag without a husband. That's what they used to, when fitan came, they would remind themselves, don't get pulled into this. So there's a lot of people suffering right now because of all these fitan that have happened in the Muslim world. And for those of us who live in bubbles, and most of us do, on the one hand, we have to be grateful for the bubbles that we're in. On the other hand, we have to be really aware those bubbles can burst very easily. That in some ways, why these tribulations are happening to these people is because they're actually people that are closer to God. Because the Prophet said, Ummati ummatun marhumatun ju'ila adhabuha fi dunyaha. My ummah is a ummah that is marhuma, that it has the mercy of God on it. And part of that mercy is that its punishment is in this world. And so when Muslims that are close to God, when they go off, they get it in this world. And our community has deviated very far from the teaching of our Prophet. فَلْيَحْذَرِ الَّذِينَ يُخَالِفُونَ عَنْ أَمْرِهِ أَن تُصِيبُهُمْ فِتْنَةٌ أَوْ يُصِيبُهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Let them be warned who go against the guidance of this Prophet. Let them be warned. فَلْيَحْذَرْ. Let them be warned. If you deviate from the path of your Prophet, this guidance he's given you, you will be afflicted with fitna and painful chastisement. So, may Allah have mercy on our ummah, on all of us, and may we keep them really in our hearts and in our minds. Make dua for them during the prayers. The Prophet ﷺ said, call on your Lord when your heart is brittle. In other words, if you cry for any reason, make dua. Even if you're crying, your pet cat died, and you start crying, make dua. Because the Prophet said that at that time, the heart's close to God. When it's brittle, when it's broken. Because when the heart breaks, there's room for the light of God to come into it. And that's why, إِنَّ اللَّهَ عِنْدَ الْمُنْكَسِرَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ. Allah is with the brokenhearted. As long as you keep your faith in God, He's with you. And unfortunately, a lot of people in this time are losing their faith. And these are people that it's questionable whether they had any faith to begin with. Because the whole point of faith is not when things are going well. It's when it falls apart. That's when faith is real. So if people lose their faith when it all falls apart, you were just on the wheel of fortune. you were on the top and now you're on the bottom. So when fortune was kind to you, you remembered God. But then when fortune is unkind to you, and fortune's a fickle friend, so alhamdulillah, we should all remember these people. And Afghanistan's another place that, they've had 40 years now it's going on. The Prophet said, how will you be like when young people grow old in the same fitna? Fitnatun yahramu fiha as-saghir. The young person grows old in it. So, but we have to be aware, it's really on your thing, it says the three, Iman, Islam, and Ihsan, the three dimensions of Islam. What is it? The three foundations of Islam. But there's really four in the Hadith Jibril that people tend to forget. And the fourth one is the signs of the end of time. And that is our deen. And so it's important to know the signs, to be able to read them. If you don't know the signs, when they come, you see the stop sign. If you don't know what that means, you keep driving and you get hit. So you have to know the signs of the end of time so that I know what this is. This is signs that we're getting closer. اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. So we're certainly closer than the Prophet said, بُعِثْتُ أَنَا وَالسَّاعَةُ كَهَاتَيْنِ. I was sent and the hour is like this. That was 1400 years ago. So we know we're 1400 years closer, and at that time it was like this. So, but we're here, the Prophet said, if it comes and you're planting a seed, keep planting it. So we're people of hope. And Abu Yusuf on his deathbed, the great Hanafi scholar, was memorizing some masail, and one of his students said that you're about to meet your Lord and you're preoccupied with this. He said, I'd rather meet him knowing these things than being ignorant of them. And that's the way of our religion. It's no matter what, we keep doing it. Like the Chinese calligraphers when they were being attacked, and the master came out and said, this is the time to do our calligraphy. They just kept doing their calligraphy. If you saw Hero. So that's what we have to do. Just keep doing the work, keep learning the deen. My dissertation is on Abdul Wahid ibn Ashar. And I read everything I could find on him. I read all the tabaqat literature. Alhamdulillah, I've read most of what he's written. And what I was amazed about was he lived the first 20 years of his life. He died at 49. The first 20 years of his life were some of the best times in Morocco. He lived under Mansour al-Dhahabi, and very peaceful time. But the second half of his life was all civil war and fitan. His city, Fez, was bombed several times. They used to have majaniq, they would throw fire bombs in. The city was bombed several times. He never mentioned anywhere I couldn't find where he mentioned the fitan. All he left behind is fiqh, aqidah, tafsir, tajweed. He was a master of tajweed. He has several books. Grammar, usul al-fiqh. That's what he left behind. Because fitan they come and they go. As long as human beings have been on this planet, trust me, the Mongols, what they did was much worse than anything that's happening right now in the Muslim world. Much worse. They didn't leave anything breathing when they came into the Muslim cities. They just killed everybody. It was much worse. The Muslims actually their faith got stronger. You look at the post-Mongol period of Islam, and it's great, great spiritual. Even this city, there's a sheikh here, Maulana al-Rumi, Jalaluddin al-Rumi. He fled the Mongol invasion. His father had some premonition and took them out. His city was destroyed after that, and they came here and under the auspices of the Seljuks. So fitan come and go, but this stays. Knowledge stays. And that's what you're going to take with you. You won't take the fitan with you. When you leave this world, you won't take the fitan with you. But Allah says to you, Iqra warqa. Recite what you know and be raised in degrees. يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمِ darajat. Those who believe and are given knowledge. That's to have humility. Utul ilm. Even though you have to earn it and work for it and struggle, it's still a gift from God. So inshallah, use this time to learn as much as you can. Try to implement as much as you can while you're here from the sunnah to make things become habituated. And I'm going to talk about that a lot, about habit and inculcation of habit and things. So, jazakumullah khairan, subhanakallahumma bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Akramakumullah, inshallah.